going to speak Hebrew first to help people with the translation feature, and then I'm going to move over to English, okay? ערב טוב לכולם, מפעולת דוד, ממכון חרוב. אני מאוד שמחה שבאתם היום. לפני שאנחנו מתחילים, כמה דברים טכניים. אתם קיבלתם את ההערות על איך לשמוע תרגום לעברית באופן סימולטני. אל תגידו שלא, כי אתם באמת קיבלתם. אבל אני רוצה להגיד לכם שוב, למי שלא בטוח איך. תסתכלו על הסרגל למטה, ואתם תראו גלובוס, ובגלובוס כתוב, מתחת לגלובוס, interpretation. אם אתם צריכים אותו, אתם רואים שכתוב Hebrew and English. אם אתם רוצים לשמוע בעברית את הכל, תלחצו על עברית. ואז אתם תשמעו את ההרצאה שהיא באנגלית בעברית כולו. בסדר? אתם שומעים אותי עכשיו בעברית, כי אני מדברת בעברית. כשאני אעבור לאנגלית, תכף אתם אמורים לשמוע, אם אתם הפעלתם את זה, לשמוע את התרגום שלי. ודבר נוסף, שאם אתם לא מעוניינים בשום תרגום, אז אל תלחצו על כלום. אוקיי? ההרצאה הזו מוקלטת, אני אצטרך להגיד את זה עוד הרבה פעמים כשאנשים ייכנסו, כי שואלים אותי, אתם תקבלו אותו או בלינק או ביוטיוב באיזשהו שלב, אוקיי? אז זה משהו שיקרה. השקפים לא יגיעו אליכם, ההקלטה כן תגיע אליכם, בדרך כלל אחר. אוקיי? So I'm going to switch over to English now and say good evening to everybody. Welcome to this introductory lecture about BBM, breath, body, mind, an intervention designed to enhance physical and mental health during times of stress and trauma. The co-founders of this intervention, Dr. Patricia Gerbar and Dr. Richard Brown, will be giving us a course in a few weeks. And this is your chance to hear about the intervention and experience it a bit. Okay, I'll talk about that at the end as well. Unfortunately, Dr. Gerbar is not feeling well, so she won't be with us this evening. And giving the lecture is Dr. Brown, the co-creator of BBM. He's an associate professor. I picked and chose of all the things that I could say about you, so this is what I'm going to say. He's an associate professor of clinical psychiatry at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. And for more than 30 years, Dr. Brown has taught and worked as a psychiatrist, particularly as a consultant for other physicians and healthcare providers who need help to treat very complex treatment-resistant patients. Through the years, he has developed novel treatments, including mind-body practices for many who are unable to respond to conventional medicines. He has written over 100 articles, books, and book chapters about integrative treatments for people suffering from fatigue, stress, insomnia, anxiety, PTSD, depression, cognitive dysfunction, schizophrenia, addiction, and so forth. Unfortunately, we don't have any of those here in Israel, so I'm just kidding. We have many of them. I'm going to say something about Dr. Gerbarg as well. She is an assistant clinical professor in psychiatry also at New York Medical College, and she practices integrative psychiatry, combining standard and complementary treatments. Her research focuses on mind-body practices for reducing the effects of stress and trauma, particularly in survivors' mass disasters. Dr. Brown is going to present BBM, and we'll leave a few minutes at the end for questions. If you have questions in the meantime, while on mute, please write them in the chat. Take a look at them. Dr. Brown, welcome. Evening. I want to say one more thing actually before you begin, and that is I want to introduce also Shira Gordon, who is in my upper left corner. And I would say that you're the project manager, I don't know exactly what to call you, of BBM, also somewhat of a Hebrew speaker. So she's also very interested in helping us bring this intervention here to Israel. And welcome to you too as well, Shira. Dr. Brown, you can unmute yourself and put up your slides, and we're ready to hear you.
Great. So just to say a word about the slides, we have to talk about things with concepts to know about the background, but what I'm going to introduce you to is a set of skills that can make every system in your body, mind, and spirit that's measurable become optimal. And it lasts for quite a while after, let's see, after, I'm just looking at the language here. At the moment, I'm just going to go over. So what I'm teaching you is skills that can make every system measurable in your body work at its best. You don't have to do this breathing all the time. It's best to do some every day. And we'll talk about that. And I want you to know there's a lot of science behind it, but I can't do the practice for you. I'm giving you spinach, not chocolate. Okay? So when we do questions later, I'll hopefully do the slides first, then we'll do a little practice. I can't emphasize enough that stress creates distortions in our electromagnetic energy field, because you may not realize, but you're mostly a field of energy. You have very little mass, and your ability to heal people is dependent on your energy field primarily. And so shifting that field to be truly healing is absolutely crucial. So if something's uncomfortable or you're not sure or you cannot hear me or see me, let me know and we should be able to change it so it's better. But we'll go to the intellect first, which is only one of many skills that the mind has. Okay. And I'm having trouble advancing. So maybe it's a matter of sharing and who's in the lead.
You've actually shared it.
Yes.
Would try doing enter.
Yeah, none of the commands are working.
None of the commands are working. Let's see. Ah. So I can't because I can't for you. You want me to put them up myself?
Yeah, if you could move them, that would be great.
I'll have to put them up from my computer, however. So I'm gonna take you off the share, get off the screen, their screen,
So
and
I'll stop
share it and I'll
share.
put it up. Right, stop share. I'll put it up
Okay.
myself, and you'll say next every time you want me to go on next.
Right.
Okay, great. I'm gonna put it up here. Take off all the other things I have here, or not. Okay, everybody see? Not if you do. Okay, so I'm moving to the first one.
Great. So we realized after 9/11 that the one healer, one client model was no longer adequate much of the time in this modern world. And we have more mass disasters to come, whether it's climate disasters, war, genocide, and so on. And the model we wanted to develop was quick response, even in war zones. There's very little study of things in war zones, genocide, et cetera. And that we could quickly train trainers to extend our effects. This is an extension of the lay healer model, where you get empathic local people to do everyday psychotherapy with people. It's really changing the foundation of your internal operating systems, meaning you're changing the foundation of your autonomic nervous system, which does everything for you, basically. And we wanted it to be able to make it simple, teach it quickly, and be safe, because there are kinds of breathing which can be healing and are ancient methods. But for some people, it can make them very anxious or have PTSD flashbacks or get psychotic. So we wanted things that would work and could easily be learned and taken anywhere, regardless of the culture, and no religion, no foreign words, all totally comfortable in that culture. And so we're going to be talking about some of the projects we've done. We don't have time for all of them. Next slide. So the autonomic system is generally ignored in medical education and psychologist education in the West. You have the sympathetic system. When I talk about it with clients or patients, I talk about it as your stress response system. This helps you get the things that make you feel good and avoid the things that make you feel bad. and it creates a lot of inflammation and burns a lot of energy. The parasympathetic system is the counterbalancing system, and it not only reduces inflammation and recharges all the energy and all the systems of the body, but it's crucial for your emotional regulation. It's crucial for solving difficult problems. They both work better together than alone. And in ancient India and China, they saw the sympathetic system as more masculine and the parasympathetic as a more nurturing feminine system. And it's really critical to loving and empathic behaviors and also being able to mentalize what's going on in the other person's head. Next slide.
Now mine's not working.
There we go. So normally what happens is the way we are when we're not a small baby being taken care of lovingly is our stress response system gets way more active than our recharging system, our loving empathic system. Okay. So most people are way in stress mode. And then the way we ordinarily breathe also perpetuates that even more. So when you learn how to breathe in a different way, and in the beginning you regulate it, and it carries over to when you're not doing it with practice, there's the two systems come together, and then everything measurable works much better. Next slide. So stress and trauma affect not only your emotion processing areas, but your thinking, solving problem areas. And so you don't think as well, and emotion takes over, and you go in a default mode. And you also are thinking about yourself, not about other people. Next slide. So a simplified wiring diagram. Basically, the emotional system includes, let's say, the limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and other areas like that. And information comes from the body and affects how your internal world is behaving. And that flavor of the internal world colors how you see the outer world. So most of the time, your view of the outer world is very much affected by your emotional inner state. How much can you change the outer world? Maybe this much. How much can you change your inner world? A lot. So breathing is the simplest way to do that. Are there some other ways? Yes, but the breathing works better, faster, cheaper, with less side effects and time than anything else. Next slide. So coherent breathing also improves the soothing, healing part of the nervous system. And that feeds into every area of what we think, say, and do. And for the person of average height, it's around 4.5 to 6 breaths per minute. The tall people need to do slower breathing for optimal results. And for children, it may be slightly faster. Okay, I won't get into the physiology of that. And we find equal inhale and exhale. The two systems are complementary, and when they're balanced, they help each other work much better. It's not that there are times where you may make one predominate and you learn how to do that, but it's simpler to make it equal inhale and exhale. We're kind of set up to do that. And this improves what's called heart rate variability. You will find this over and over in the scientific literature. That at this point may be the best marker of health and longevity. And when heart rate variability is impaired, which it naturally is as we get older, unless you work on keeping it in a better place, everything ages a lot faster. So the core breathing we do, which we call coherent or resonant breathing, you'll mostly hear us call it coherent breathing. It was described 3,000 years ago in a Chinese medical text as the breathing for longevity that the advanced monks did. Okay? Beginners were often started with very slow breathing with a very long exhale. And we find people don't have the time to spend several hours a day doing 20 years of breathing. Okay. And if you learn coherent breathing, any kind of meditation or other kind of breathing is very easy to learn quickly. Next slide. Okay, again, the average adult, it'll be about 4.5 to 6. Mammals first learn to regulate their physiology by co-regulation with their caretakers. Most importantly is their mother, but also other family members, including grandparents, etc. This enables the development of proper emotional regulation, as well as thought and processing of decisions and so on. And you see the mama koala bear with the baby bear. They're co-regulating. There is no thought, no speech, but important, crucial things are going on here. Next slide. There's a great deal of research in it. If we want to, we can talk a little bit more about this. So trauma disrupts connection, and defensive, self-involved reactions occur instead of social engagement and thinking about others. And you can have fight or flight. You can also have freezing, immobilization, which often goes with dissociation. And this interferes with healthy, reciprocal, mutual relationships. You cannot feel safe or establish trust. You may have trouble being close. You may not be able to make eye contact. You may not be able to smile. You may not be able to soothe yourself. These are all crucial skills we all need to cooperate together. Next slide. And of course, you can see anger in the bird on the left side of the screen, and you can see in the beady eyes of the cat, okay, kind of fear and anger together. Next slide. So social engagement enables you to have connections. That's probably why we are so much more successful than Neanderthals. Our ability to connect and make networks and use dance and music and poetry and things like that to connect with each other, verbally and non-verbally. And here's some examples of social engagement. Interoception is very important. Interoception is a perception of internal feelings. We usually don't pay much attention to our internal feelings, but they so much affect how our brain is processing the outside world. And you kind of need emotional tags to let you know what's important. One of the problems in autism is that you don't have those emotional tags. So even remembering the name of the street you live on becomes hard. And it turns out the interoceptive cortex, as many scientists in this area call it, is the dorsal posterior insular cortex. And second to second, it's forming a map of the internal state of your body. And that's especially the core of your body. So I'm going to stand up to show you. It's kind of, it goes from the base of the spine, kind of up to here, but especially up to here. Okay. And you'll find that all the ancient practices that heal people from trauma especially break the link between a negative memory, a negative emotional memory, and a historical event. They break the link, and the negativity kind of dissolves with practice of the things we'll be doing. Okay. And that's a pivotal place between not only your emotion regulation, but your decision-making assessment of what's the right thing to do in the next moment, which is usually out of your awareness. It comes, the action comes out often, and you don't realize what's been happening in your brain. Next slide. So why is controlling our breathing useful as a skill to have? Because voluntary control of your breathing allows you to access those internal systems and make them work in the best pattern that they can. By changing your breathing, you change your thoughts, your feelings, and you can see things more clearly without being flavored as much by previous conditioning from your family, from your culture. You see things as they are. And the brain pays more attention to signals from the lungs than any other sensory input. Why is that? Well, what happens if you choke and your airway gets clogged by a piece of food? You can't breathe. And if you can't breathe, after 3 or 4 minutes, the average person will be dead. It won't be much longer, even if you've trained, but it's around about, let's say, 3 to 7 minutes approximately. So the brain kind of signals you got to breathe. And the brain is always paying great attention to numerous very subtle signals from inside your lungs and different receptors. I won't go into the details on it. Next slide. Yes. So by pacing the breathing, it turns out slowing your breathing down into the range I talked about increases not only the activity of the parasympathetic system, but it releases anti-stress social bonding hormones, the two most important ones, prolactin, which is necessary for breastfeeding, and oxytocin, which some scientists call the cuddle hormone, and is very important for bonding, particularly long-term monogamy in humans, especially. Um, and it turns out different patterns of breathing make certain circuits in these crucial emotional regulation and decision thinking circuits work better and work together instead of separately and independently. And that means you can accomplish a lot more effectively. And you can see a big change in the waves on the electroencephalogram, a state of calm, attentive alertness. Usually when you're calm, think of when you're really calm, I don't know, somewhere on the beach with friends, whatever makes you relax. You're not ready for differential equations. When you're really alert, you're ready for differential equations or higher level algebra or whatever, uh, but you're not really calm. You're kind of edgy and impatient. So it's a paradoxical state to have calmness and alertness together. And it means you will be more successful and it slows your aging. Next slide. It reduces defensive reactions, which in mammals tend to be aggressive reactions. Okay, defensive and aggression go together, fear and anger, and you begin to feel safe, connected, loved, and loving. That doesn't mean you cannot protect yourself. You will more easily know who you truly can trust and who you need to be afraid of, and feel people before you see them, before they're within earshot, who is nearby that is dangerous to you. This is very important for soldiers, for example. That's a whole nother area. And you also feel much more connected to the plants, to your environment, as well as other people. Next slide. Okay, so some experience in mass disasters. 9/11, I started working with 9/11 responders around 2007. And there are still 400,000 New Yorkers dramatically affected by PTSD from 9/11. And most of them had years of psychotherapy that had no impact at all on their symptoms. Also, the people who worked around Ground Zero at 9/11 got a lot of toxic chemicals from the two towers. And we worked with a famous physician in India who was trained in a Tibetan system of detoxification. And all the courses I did for years in New York were to buy the herbs to detox the responders. And we saw amazing results with 1,500 of them, actually, who were quite sick, including some colleagues of mine. Next slide. This is one group. These are 17 responders who were in a much larger class of 120 people with PTSD. Mostly sexual PTSD for women were the other subjects. And we did this research with a group from Canada that's quite famous in anxiety and PTSD and multiple comorbid anxiety and depressive disorders. And they came down and studied this. No one wanted to study it with us because they didn't think there was any hope for these people. And we showed within 2 days we had dramatic impact on their symptoms. I could give you case histories of some of them, people who were who barely made it out of the building, which collapsed seconds later. And they lost many friends and family members along with that. Next slide. This is one of our more recent studies looking at therapists in Northern Ireland who were taking care of special needs children who were mainstreamed. So autism, often with ADD or just pure ADD, often with PTSD, ASD, that is autism, and ADHD altogether. And these therapists provide the educational and social services for 100,000 special needs children in the public school system. And at the time of COVID, as their parents were getting sick with COVID, and they got vaccines later than some other places did, they were homeschooling their children. Most of them were women, mothers. They were trying to also make home visits in very disadvantaged low-income areas with a lot of violence and danger for them while their children were at home, being homeschooled. And so a group of them did, of course, an introductory 3-day workshop, 12 hours, and they did scales before and after, and we'll show you a little bit of that. Next slide. This is a scale called the overload stress scale. And you can see the average is the red dotted line for most people in Western culture. And they are almost at the peak of what the scale can measure. And within a very short time, they are better than normal under the same amount of stress. Right? Next slide. This is a slightly different scale, one of a number of measures from another scale called the exercise-induced feelings inventory. This is their tranquility. It quickly went up and it stayed up. Next slide. And this is their exhaustion. Their exhaustion went way down. They had a lot more energy to do their work and to take care of their families under the same amount of stress. Next slide. And these are a whole bunch of measures. This has to do with trying to get questions we can ask that access internal physiological states. And pretty much everybody has a significant improvement. There's usually about a 3 to 5% that has a hard time in the beginning. Anger often persists longer and takes more work to bring down than most other things. But basically, most everything improves really quickly. And we've done this with soldiers who've been under extreme combat stress and are acutely back from heavy combat and heavy losses of friends. Next slide. And it's really good when you're pregnant for multiple reasons. Not only makes delivery much easier, but it delivers more oxygen to the baby, just as it does to all your cells when you do this breathing regularly. Your brain and lungs work much better. So if you want to do high altitude skiing or climb to the top of Mount Everest without oxygen, this will help you do it. We can talk about it if you want that as a personal goal. If you want to go to the Himalayas or other places. And the other thing is, it makes it much easier to breastfeed and have enough milk let down and bond with the baby, which is a major problem for postpartum depressed patients. We find that once a mother learns this, they teach it to their kids, they teach it to their angry husband, they teach it to their coworkers. Next slide. This is in the Republic of Ireland, and they were also quite stressed. They were so stressed when I began to work with them, they would not do rating scales. They wouldn't even take the time to do rating scales. And I think they really did not want to know what their measures were. Oh, I should say the Northern Ireland group, by the way, when we first assessed them, 3/4 of them were in a high-risk stress zone, where had they continued in that stress zone, it is extremely likely they would have had a major medical or psychiatric catastrophe or both in the next 3 years. And we moved 3/4 of them quickly into the lowest stress zone. That's, to me, one of the most important findings from that study. So with this Republic of Ireland study, they decided after they felt better, they didn't tell me that at first, because we Irish tend to feel guilty. And but they did their own study. They said, we're gonna see if this really works. So they had been doing two programs in their school system for their children who were being mainstream. One is called mindfulness. Most people around the world know about mindfulness. And they also had a lot of Eastern European economic immigrants in the early 2000s when things were really good financially in Ireland. And so a lot of people wanted to kill their neighbors who had a different accent, and the kids were being affected by their parents' views of these things. And they had been paying for these programs for years. And so they compared the three of them independently in randomized studies. Next slide. And what they found was breath, body, mind had a significant improvement in anxiety, depression, anger, connection, decreases in emotional ability and negative behaviors, dramatic. Mindfulness was doing nothing. And the kind of diversity inclusion program, which they call Grow from Seeds and Love Your Neighbor, there was a slight improvement, but a lot less. Typical of any mind-body practice. What we do has much more powerful effect size than other mind-body programs. Next slide. This is me in South Sudan. I've been there a number of times. This is in 2011. A philanthropist who was a social worker had taken a class with me at a family therapy institute in New York called the Ackerman Institute. And she then brought it to a clinic that she was running for years with her family's money for women who had been slaves in North Sudan and tortured every day in unimaginable ways. I won't go into it. They are the most traumatized people I've ever seen, and their children. And these people, I was there for that first time about a week. I worked with hundreds of people. This is a group of 400. They've just been brought back after 10 to 20 years in slavery with torture, and the children, under their clothes, are covered with torture wounds all over their body. Okay. And they were in such a state of fear. I got to interview, before I taught them some breathing, about 50 of them individually on their trauma history. And they weren't sure that this was for real. They thought it might be another mental trip because they were not just tortured physically, they were tortured mentally, sadistically. And they thought this might be another trick, so they would let down their guard. And so I basically told the translator, let's start doing the breathing. And we don't have time today, and it's hard to play this on this screen, but the head of the nonprofit that had bought them out of slavery, so I had helped unload several $1 million of cow vaccine, because it takes $100,000 to buy a woman out of slavery from North Sudan at that time. And they were very skeptical. The nonprofit I was working through felt that things like this might allow the devil to come in. And so they would only give me 20 minutes to teach them, which was okay with me. But these people have walked for a week in the sub-Saharan desert, which is at that time was typically about 110 degrees almost all day and 100 degrees at night at the coolest part. And the translator says, the white boy is going to teach you how to breathe. Their expression was not happy, okay? And in 20 minutes, let's see the next slide. This is how they look. They're smiling, they're laughing, they're hugging each other, they're clapping, they start dancing. They just start up dancing spontaneously after breathing and meditating for about 20 minutes. And I've also taught other groups, including people with polio. They have a huge amount of polio there, even though the UN says they don't. They have no benzene or petrol to run refrigerators to store vaccines in. So there's hundreds of thousands of people with severe polio, and their families hate them. And I worked with them, as well as a bunch of other people, some women who had already been doing the breathing because the philanthropist taught them. And I taught them more advanced group healing practices and have followed them for years and went back to see them again. Next slide. They're amazing teachers. They can't read or write, so they learn faster than any Western person does because they have nothing to get in the way of learning this because what I teach comes from the heart primarily. Next slide. The average woman has 7 to 9 children. It's common they may have 16 children because so many children die in the first 3 years. It's like a Neolithic age. These are 19 women who had been doing the breathing for 6 months before I got there. And at the end of the week, they came to me and said, "We want you to teach us more. And we want to go out to all the villages and orphanages in our country to teach it to other women." Next slide. We've also worked extensively with several different groups in Rwanda, which is still affected by the genocide in 1994. And one of the groups that we've worked with is led by Jean Bosco Niyonzima. And he himself was nearly killed during the genocide. And he feels he recovered learning some Qigong. And when he heard about what we were doing, working through a women's global empowerment program to teach the women to do the breathing to enhance their micro investment for their community and their mindfulness that they had been taught by a wonderful woman yoga teacher who's also a Harvard MBA. He began to work with us as well. And he started his healing center, and they train what they call community healing assistants. And they combine our breathing with some things we do, but with a Rwandan flavor of kind of sharing your life story in very small groups after you've done breathing and feel safer and able to share. And they have dramatic results in what happens to people. Let's see the next slide. They have over 3,000 people, but the data from the first almost 1,900 showed a 60% decrease in depression and 56% decrease in anxiety, 64% decrease in PTSD. And to me, the other thing is a 60% decrease in intimate partner violence, domestic abuse. I know no report of anything ever like that at all. And it's one of the major consequences of PTSD. Major decrease in drug abuse, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. And they're having a problem. I'm good friends with Sean Bosco. We have so many things similar in our personality and backgrounds, actually. They've been having a problem with gangs of young men getting violent. And they not only have their own orphans from the genocide, but they have orphans coming over from the border from the Republic of Congo who've seen the most horrendous atrocities there. And so he, in a short time, he's so enthusiastic about this. He trained, 150 healing assistants who then trained 800 children, teens. And what they saw was not only did their aggression stop, but their standardized test scores in school shot way up to the top. And I found around the world, it's often the ones who are angry that are the smartest because they see the injustice and inequality, and it makes them crazy. And they don't know what to do except try to hurt people. Next slide. Yeah, so 152 students. They've now done over 800. It's probably more since I last talked to him in May. And they just love it. And the teachers at school were in shock about what happened to these kids. Next slide. Yeah, so all kinds of scales went down, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. Let's go back. Yeah, this is one of the boys saying, "It helped me focus more on my exams, and the problems with my family on top of the poverty. I now can let that go. I feel more confident that I'm in charge of my life," is basically what he's saying. He no longer feels helpless and vulnerable, and he knows how he lives his life makes a huge difference to himself and others. And people now like him. They didn't like him when he was doing bad things to other people. Next slide. These are Rohingya children. Actually, usually in the first year and a half, 450,000 traumatized children came from Myanmar into Bangladesh. It's the worst part of the country to go to. It's a country the size of Iowa with a population of 165 million people. That's the size of the state of Iowa. And the country is 50% underwater in monsoon season. And most of these children saw their parents and siblings raped, tortured, and dismembered before they escaped into Bangladesh. And someone who had made money in the tech world and who's Bangladeshi in America set up a special asylum and trained with us. And we began training their teachers online. And they had phenomenal results, not only for the children, but for their UN caretakers who were very stressed themselves and overwhelmed. They had no mental health training. They were living under very adverse conditions too. And the caretakers began to feel caring and loving for the children once they did the breathing. And the children began to feel no longer numb and dissociated. And they noticed that the caretakers were much better. Next slide. Sumi Ardem is the psychologist in Nigeria who she's now doing different stuff for about 4 years. She was the only person taking care of the Chibok girls who'd escaped from Boko Haram, who were severely traumatized. And here she's doing coherent breathing with them. And she trained with us, and she started out doing well, but over the next 3 courses, her results on rating scales for these people, these young women, were amazing. So it does take a little practice, but she started out really well. We train you well if you do the training with us. And she was amazed. She was shocked. She was quite good at many other techniques, and she was getting no results with that for them. And these girls were under tremendous pressure. Next slide. Ukraine, we set up immediately within 2 weeks this last full-scale invasion by Putin, programs with Ukrainian with translators. And I now speak a good bit of Ukrainian. And we've trained, it's over, I'd say at this point, 350 psychologists. And in many countries, it's social workers and psychologists who really get what we're doing. Or yoga teachers who are skillful, can learn quite fast. And they're just phenomenal. And they're often being bombed as we're online together, or they've had a friend be killed 10 minutes before nearby. Or their children are having panic attacks until they train with us, and they can't drag them down to the air raid shelter, which kind of makes you crazy when you're a mother and you have to wait in your apartment to be bombed. Next slide. So we've had 130 complete the level 1 40-hour teacher training, and we have 20 level 2 and 5. I'm sorry, level 2 and 5 level 3. And many of them came to be translators. And even they're so smart. Even when they were doing translating, they were doing the practices themselves. That usually takes some practice to do. And they just love it. And they love teaching other people and seeing other people change with it. Next slide. At the very first program we did, these 2 top psychologists who are very well respected came, and they told us at the end of the program, they said, all these things are being offered to us. They're just for our heads, and they don't make us feel any different. And we realized we can't even process what they're telling us because we're so traumatized. And you make us feel better. And you encourage us to practice so we feel better, so we can help our clients. And when we go to a mass disaster, we notice the other colleagues who have not trained with you can't function, and we're the ones who have to lead things. Let's see some more slides, especially of Tatiana. So Tatiana also works through certain Jewish organizations in Ukraine, and she's an amazing woman. She's a major in emergency services in Ukraine, working both with children and adults and emergency responders. And in Russia, what the Russians do, they bomb a place. 20 to 40 minutes later, they bomb them again to try to kill the first responders. Right, next slide. Here she is working with children. Again, they were extremely traumatized, unable to make eye contact, hardly able to talk, unable to play, unable to do their homework. And if you knew what children draw, like the children from me and my, I've been working with children all my life. Usually their first drawings are undifferentiated black or reddish orange, filling whatever you give them to draw. You can't find figures or animals or flowers or anything. As they get better, the colors change into pastel and green and blue, and the sun comes out and they can draw people again over time as they get better. I also saw this with children from the Bestland School massacre in the North Caucasus. Next slide. And here she is. They have to do a lot of their lessons in the bomb shelter. And they enjoy it. And they enjoy going down. And in the beginning, they were terrified and would try to hold on to desks or if they were at home, the bed or whatever. And we use breathing buddies. You see, it's a big stuffed little bear. They're really helpful, not just for children, but a lot of adults to learn the breathing. Next slide. Okay, Yulia. Yulia, not a child psychologist, but a psychologist. She first had to stop her own panic attacks, then her 10-year-old's panic attacks. Then she went to the nearby school and in 2 weeks healed 500 children who were totally shut down. And they became completely different and healthy. Next slide. Here she is doing it with a teacher in the classroom. And you see the kids are smiling. They have fun doing this. We make it fun. Next slide. And here they're going down to the air raid shelter. And you see the little boy, the arrow is pointing to him. He's got his hands in a heart sign as they're going down. Next slide. And this is one of the breathing techniques we use for children, the magic flower candle. Next slide. Okay. 2 weeks, they were better. Next slide. I'm rushing, obviously. So we obviously want to help you do the same thing with the children who are terribly traumatized. And you can do it. If women in Sudan who can't read or write can learn it, you can learn it. Next slide. And Shira is leading all of our Israeli programs. And I know I had more Israelis in my New York weekly breathing group for years than any other ethnic group. And they are some of the ones who've helped us the most around the world developing these programs. Next slide. And here's Shira teaching in Israel. And next slide. I think we'll skip the breathing because I want to do a little breathing with you. And I ordinarily like to have 20 or 30 minutes, but I want to make sure Jody has time to show you techniques for children, just so you have an idea. Again, these are skills, they take practice. So in a sense, I'm going to give you a crash exposure, and we're going to start with standing, just standing movement. Then we're going to combine breathing with movement, and then we're just going to focus on the breathing. Let me know if you cannot see me or hear me. Okay. So the first thing is imagine you're a rag doll. This is how I talk to the kids. And you just shake very gently. I'm just bending my knees. My arms are hanging like ropes. I'm not using any tension in my arms. I'm just bending at the knees and kind of going up and down. And my neck's relaxed enough that my head's kind of bobbing. So it's kind of like being the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. Just gently shaking, shaking. Now, martial artists do this typically before they fight around the world. right? In Africa and many other ancient cultures, you do this before a social cohesion ritual. And we can enhance this stress relief by different things. Right now, let's just use a little bit of sound. Imitate the sound I'm going to make. And relax, close your eyes, extend your spine to the sky. Get a little longer, a little longer. Feel your feet connecting with the earth. Notice the sensations inside your body. Notice your thoughts. And notice the qualities of your breathing. And open your eyes. Often, to release the deeper layers of stress, you have to first get rid of a layer of anger and fear. So let's do a little bit of what we call Ha breath. So in Ha breath, I'm turning sideways so you see the action better. Breathing in, my palms come up, my elbows go back, and then you go, ha, like shaking water off your fingers, and the ha is coming from my belly, okay? So now if you're in a place where you can't make a loud sound like that, you can do a strong inhale and a vigorous, forceful exhale like this. But I recommend blowing your nose. I'm just giving you the visual if you're going to do that first. Okay. So breathing in. Ha! 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 Two more. Ha! Ha! Once again, relax, close your eyes. Feel the sensations in your body. Where has the energy changed the most? Notice your thoughts, kind of thoughts, the spacing of the thoughts. And what rhythm does your breath want to go into naturally? And opening our eyes. There are other kinds of Ha breath, one of which was developed by some of the children we were teaching in a very, very traumatized area. But that's for the future. I want to teach you something we often do with kids, and we call it painting the waterfall. So we introduce coherent breathing to groups with a simple movement. It's a third the speed of our usual normal breathing. So it's different, and it helps in the beginning to have a simple movement to tie it to. And painting the waterfall is from Qigong. It means we breathe in, the hands float up, and you imagine you feel a waterfall on the back of your hands. And then when we breathe out, I dip my knees and I slowly float my hands down, and I feel the waterfall on the other side. So you feel the waterfall going up, you feel the waterfall going down. It's painting the waterfall. Let's do it with me. Breath in, 2, 3, 4. Breath out, 2, 3, 4. This could be done in a wheelchair or on a stretcher. Breath in, 2, 3, 4. Breath out. 2, 3, 4. Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. Stay with me, slow it down. Breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Once more. Breath in. Breath out. Relax. Go inside, closing your eyes if possible. Feel the sensations. Where do you feel them the most? And notice the kind of thoughts or how often the thoughts are coming. And how does your breathing want to be without your controlling it? And opening our eyes. Let's do a little more coherent breathing. Let's see. Oh. Hmm. And I'm having a little trouble stopping my share. Yeah. Can you stop my screen share, Shira?
Dr. Brown, I'm sharing already. It's
Oh,
okay.
you are? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's listen to the sound of 2 bells. We're going to breathe in on the high tone. We're going to breathe out on the low tone. This is effortless, continuous breathing. Some people who've done breathing before, they're often taught to do really forceful breathing. It's so relaxed. Okay.
Can you hear it well? Thumbs up if you
That's
can.
the low tone. We're going to breathe out on the low tone. Breathing in now on the high tone. Breathing out on the low tone. Very
We're not hearing
relaxed.
them.
Not hearing them?
I think we're not hearing the bells, no.
Okay.
Let me stop share and try again.
Yeah.
Hear it now? Okay.
Great. Breath in on the high tone. Breath out on the low tone. Notice how your body relaxes more when you breathe out. Breath in. Breath out. Relax a little more. Breath in. Breath out. Let your shoulders drop. Breath in. Belly gets bigger. Breath out. Belly gets smaller. If you're not sure what your belly's doing, you can put a hand on it. Breath in. Breath out. If your belly's going the opposite way, join me. Breath out on the low tone. Breath in on the high tone. Can you feel the breath moving in your nose and throat? Imagine resting your attention on that feeling. Relaxing a little more when you breathe out. Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Continuous, effortless, gentle. Whatever distractions come into your mind, let them float by like clouds in the sky. Keep your attention on the feeling of the breath moving in and out of your nose and throat, and letting the bells guide you. Breath in. Breath out. And usually people coming with a lot of stress, which is virtually everybody in the world these days, does this much harder than you need to. Let go a little more. Like you're inhaling the delicate scent of a rose, another really amazing flower. When your mind goes away, bring it back to feeling the breath moving inside you. Imagine a beautiful smile comes on your face, like you're 5 years old again, and you're having fun playing. Let the distractions float by. Feel the breath. Breath in, the belly gets bigger. Breath out, the belly gets smaller. And you may be having more thoughts than usual. That's okay. It's part of all stress getting released. Just stay with the breath. No need to resist distractions. No need to focus on them. Let your attention rest on feeling the breath moving. Let's gently fade the bells out. I want to make sure Jody has time to present too, because she's amazing. So I'll turn it over to you, Jody. Would I like to do more breathing with you? Sure, but I also want you to have the benefit of Jody's experience and wisdom.
We're also going to have a few minutes to talk about the course at the end, before we end, and questions.
So you want to do questions at the end, Shira?
Yes, yeah, not now. We want to hear you now. Hello.
Okay. So I have worked with children for a very long time, and one of the experience, are we simultaneously translating?
Yes.
So one of the experiences that I have witnessed with children who are in high levels of trauma is a very strong disassociation, then presents in different behavior patterns. Those behavior patterns, those behavior patterns could be complete shutdown, where they're to do yesterday, or a little while ago. It could be that they're having explosions, sort of like tantrums, not explosions, like just screaming and unable to emotionally regulate and control themselves. And so what we want to do with the BBM practices with the children is to start to bring them back into their bodies in a way that's safe and comfortable and child-friendly, obviously, and healing. So, and we as the adults around the children, in order to help a child regulate, have to be regulated, because a dysregulated child can't regulate around a dysregulated adult. So the first place is to do these practices for yourself, and then we can start to kind of, then you can start to do them with the kids, or you can do them with the kids, share the practices with them. So I haven't got very long with you today, but I thought maybe for 10 minutes or so, I'll just share some of the practices, the way I work with the kids. So let's be children together, okay? So we're going to start by just bring our hands together. And as we bring our hands together, we can just look at our hands. Wow, nice hands I have here. So you're connecting with your body all the time. And we can rub our hands together and just feel that sensation. Oh, my hands are touching each other. That's a rather nice feeling here. And then we can give ourselves just a big squeezy hug. So with the children, I call this the I love me hug. So we just give ourselves a big I love me hug. There's not enough hugs in the world generally anyway. And I think that kind of rocking sensation is very soothing and very comforting. So if you rock, they'll probably rock with you. I noticed some of you were just rocking automatically anyway, and the children may do that too. And then you could also perhaps just give yourself a little reassuring tap. And we can take some deep breaths and just have that sensation of a little bit. And then we'll come back and rub our hands together again. And this time we're going to say hello to one of our arms. So we're going to give it a lovely squeeze down our arm, just squeezing into it, going, oh, hello, my arm. And then we're going to go into our hand and we're going to squeeze each of the fingers, preferably between the joints. And you can look at your fingers while you're doing it. Go, oh, my fingers are rather nice. I wonder whether you said hello to your hand today. So just connecting with your body, finding, ways of just being here with your body. And then remember your thumb as well. And then we've got a lovely little pad in the middle of our hand, and we're going to give that a lovely big squeeze. So we're going to breathe in and we're going to squeeze it tight. And as we breathe out, we're going to let it go with a and then let's squeeze it again. Lovely big out breath. One more time. A lovely big squeeze. And then you could, if you wanted to, just give your hand a bit of a massage. Oh, it feels rather nice. And then we'll just squeeze down our arm, just squeezing down that arm, and maybe give it a lovely rub. Just feeling your arm. And then just notice the difference between your arms. So the arm I've just worked is bubbling a little bit. It's saying hello to me. It's awake and alert. So I think my other arm's a bit asleep. Should we do the other arm as well? So let's rub our hands together again. And then we'll give that other arm a lovely squeeze, saying hello to our arm again, squeezing down through our arm, into our hand, into our fingers, again, between each joint. Very nice. Very good, squeezing. And then we're going to get into that little center point in our hand again. And let's take a lovely big breath. Give it squeeze both sides. You can squeeze, and as we breathe out, you can let it go. And we'll do a small big breath in as you squeeze that lovely point in the middle of your hand. And squeeze, let it go, and better. And then let's just squeeze it again, and we'll let it go. Very good. Okay, so now let's give that arm a nice rub, or a bit more of a squeeze. So we wake that arm up as well. And then let's rub our hands together again. And we're just going to squeeze down our legs, saying good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or hello to our legs and our feet. So just feeling into your feet. Beautiful. Okay, and then we're going to do a little bit of breathing. And as we do our breathing, we're going to use our imaginations, and we are also going to make some sound. So we're going to bring our hands around in front of our bellies, and we're going to breathe in and stretch up as high as you can. And when you breathe out, we're going to stretch our arms really wide and make a beautiful circle around you, any color you want it to be. And while we're making that circle, we're going to hum together. So let's breathe in, stretch up, hum, and make some beautiful circles of energy around you. Breathing in, hum, breath in, hum, and then let's collect the energy, all that beautiful energy just created, and we're going to hum as we bring it down through the center of our bodies. Breath in, lovely breath in, hum. One more time, lovely breath in, hum. Beautiful. And then we're going to bring our hands here in front of us. And we're going to breathe in. And let's squeeze as we breathe out. So you've got a magic ball inside your hands. Breath in. And squeeze it as you breathe out. Ooh, giving a lovely squeeze. Breath in. And breath out. And then let's take that ball around your body. Ooh, moving it all the way from one side to the other. And we could make nice big circles in front of us. Beautiful. And then we could make some sleeping eights with it as well. Ooh. There we go. So breathing as you make your lovely eights. Wow, that's lovely, everybody. beautiful shapes you're making. And then just come back and have your hands in front of you again. And we're going to breathe in. And as we breathe out, we're going to squeeze that ball into a little magic ball inside our hands. And we're going to blow some more magic into it because I think we like lots of magic. So let's take a lovely breath in. And as we breathe out, beautiful. Let's do that 2 more times, shall we? Breath in. Very good. One more breath. And then we're going to take that magic ball and we're going to put it in our body. So if you want to feel really powerful, you can put it into your tummy. If you want to feel more love and compassion, you can put it into your heart. And if you feel like you need a bit more wisdom, you can put it into your forehead. So I'm going to put mine into my heart today. So you just put yours wherever you want to. So let's breathe in and squeeze that magic into your body, shall we? Just breathe it in gently. Beautiful job. Wow. Just see what it feels like to have that magic inside you. Ah, that's lovely. So I have a little bunny here, and these are, we call them breathing buddies. These are our friends that we breathe with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how you would use one. And you could find a pair of socks or pretend you've got one or something like that. So we're going to put it on our bellies here. And we're going to look down at our little friend. So imagine you've got a little friend, okay? Just imagine you've got one. And we're going to smile at your lovely friend. And because smiling is really good. It's nice when we smile. So we're going to smile at our lovely friend. And we're going to take a lovely breath in. And as we breathe out, our little friend comes closer to our body. And we're just breathing together. Breath in and breath out. Breath in and breath out. Breath in and breath out. And then we could bring the breath buddy up into our neck and just give it a lovely squeezy hug. If you haven't got one there, you can give yourself a hug again. Just come and give yourself a hug anyway. And just some lovely breaths. So here we might stay for a little while with the children, just breathing together, breathing in and breathing out. So this is very soothing for the children. As you can probably imagine, it might even be soothing for you too, actually. Just, very good job. And then just give yourselves a lovely big rub. We'll move the little friend away. And just give your face a wash if you want. Massage your neck or your face. Sometimes it's quite nice to massage around your forehead, your temples rather. Okay. So I'm just going to show you one more practice that we do with the children. So we're going to imagine that you can do this with one finger or two fingers, but these are magic. Okay. So one is a magic candle and the other is a magic flower, or you've got one that's a magic flower and a magic candle. And what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in the beautiful smell of the flower. And we're going to very gently blow out the magic candle with a breath in and smell that flower. And breathe out and blow that candle out very gently. One more time, breath in. Very gently breathing out. You could do that with two fingers, however you want to do that. So I'm going to open up for Q&A. Shira, would you like to do that now?
Actually, I think Paula would like to tell about the courses first and then Q&A before you and Dr. Brown.
Okay. Thank you so much for bringing the children's experience into that's really interesting. By the way, the candle and the flower are big in Israel. That's one thing that we do. The rest of them, not so much. So,
Beautiful.
there's a course coming up on July 8th. It's 3 sessions of 4 hours in the afternoon that teaches this intervention for ourselves, for anybody who wants to be able to learn how to calm themselves down, how to feel, have all those wonderful effects that Dr. Brown told us about in his research, in terms of being able to feel less stress. After the, what I want to ask is if anybody wants to register, there's 2 things. I'll write this to you also. You have to do it by July 1st, because then we'll know what's going on with the group. And you have to come to all of the meetings. They will not be taped. This is an experiential workshop. We are not going to video it. You won't be able to see it afterwards. You really need to be able to come to practice. So if you're interested, see if that time is good for you, if those times are good for you. It's 2 Mondays and a Thursday, it turns out. I will send you the information. That's one thing. The second thing is that people are very strongly, I will send you the link. I'm not going to give it to you right now. More asked if I could send it to you right now, but I'll send it to all of you by email. I'll send you the invitation by email. They are very, very strongly encouraged to do practice sessions afterwards on breathing, a number of them, which you will be given information about at the end of the course. Haruv Institute is not continuing with that. You'll do if you decide that you want to do it yourselves. There's also the possibility to do training so that you can teach this to other people, the Train the Trainers program. That, again, we are not doing it this time, but you will be able to, because BBM is working all over the place and have a lot of courses on their website that you can join if you decide you want to become a level 1 and then a level 2 instructor. Okay, so I'm going to be sending you the information about the 3-session course. And if you want to register for it, please do so by July 1st. We're closing the registration then. Okay, and think about if you can commit to those 3 sessions, because they will not be taped. Okay? Anybody who wants to ask questions about that, or questions of Dr. Brown or of Jyoti or of Shira, this is the time to do it. We have about 7 minutes left. You are all great on time. We have one question here that I think that you answered about if this can support preventing development of post-traumatic disorders among people with traumas like the traumas of the 7th of October. And I think that Dr. Gerbarg, who wrote a response to that, saying that we have reason to believe that the breath-centered programs can reduce the probability of PTSD developing, but we don't yet have a scientific study to prove this. It can, however, treat PTSD or acute trauma successfully. If anybody wants to add anything to that, you're welcome to. I think that the question, the answer will pretty much answered, but you're welcome to add anything that you want to add.
Yeah, so these practices I'm teaching came from ancient warriors, often warrior monks. We look for things that appeared in different cultures over different periods of time, very separated from each other, and could understand the science underlying it. But also we've taken, one of our studies was with Australian Vietnam veterans who were 100% disabled for 30 years. They were all in special forces in Vietnam, and their families had left them, actually. And I had them better in 5 days, 4 hours a day. And they kept getting better after that. So, my feeling is it's easier catching people at the beginning. And my feeling is ideally, this is like brushing your teeth and washing your face. This is like washing your mind, washing the stress away. And it would be so much easier if we got this when we were children. We could deal with stress and negative emotions much better, as well as your attention working better. Yeah.
Yes. There is a question here if there's a training for doing this with children.
We actually incorporate the training for the children in both the level 1 and the level 2 course. The most important thing is really being regulated yourself. Teaching the actual technique is not difficult. The more difficult part is really experiencing and feeling the calm state of alertness. That's where the training and the experience is needed.
Thank you, Shira. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Well, I have a question for people. We only did the breathing for 5 minutes, but what did you feel at the end of that time?
Would anybody like to say?
Or text. You can text. Because whether you knew it or not, our brain waves were all in synchrony. If we'd measured them, our brain waves would look all the same, calm, happy alertness. And there's now studies looking at when mothers are doing things with their children and they're happy, the same thing happens to their brain waves. This is not rocket science. It's actually relatively easy to do.
So somebody wrote that she felt very calm immediately. And somebody else wrote it was very convincing. And thank you. The exercise. Nira wrote calmer.
Yeah, I did a program yesterday with the advanced Ukrainian psychologists who've been training with me for quite a while, us for quite a while. And one of them said, I asked them at the end, how do you feel today after what we did? And I was doing more advanced breathing and meditation with them. And one of the women said, Dr. Brown, you're a wizard. I don't know how you do this. They're all psychologists. They said, we don't understand how you make us feel the way we do, given what's happening to us. But you can learn to do it. These things developed over thousands of years and were preserved, and we need them now everywhere in the world so we don't destroy the earth and each other.
We have some more comments here. Somebody felt relaxed. She's from the Karuv Institute and ready to go to sleep. Relaxed, more present. It gives a immediate way calm down for a lot of people that are very stressed. And somebody asked if she manages that this would also help young children and also the elderly. He asks if that's actually true, right? Yeah.
It's great for the elderly. I have some teachers that specialize in working with elderly, and the breathing is amazing for them, and it opens up the blood flow in their brains too. And it pulls out amyloid that predisposes to dementia. We know from recent research that the current breathing is pulling amyloid out. And we do a lot of singing with elderly too. Okay, it's a way of regulating breathing and has so many benefits in a group. Yeah.
Nira wrote that your voice is very relaxing too.
You know, when I first started doing this, because I've trained hundreds of doctors in psychiatry separate from this, and they said, well, it's just you, Dr. Brown, it's your voice. I said, some of my teachers have horrible voices, but they get the same results with the breathing. Yeah, it's okay. You can change your internal state. You just have to be shown how to do it.
Okay,
No.
we've reached 9:30 exactly. I want to thank everybody that came from BBM to join us from. Jyoti, you're in South Africa? Where are you talking to us from? Where are you speaking to us from?
I'm in England.
You're in England. Okay, and from New York. Okay, thank you so much for coming and joining us here. I hope that we'll have a good registration for the course. I will send you all the information tomorrow morning for whoever wants it. And good night to everybody. Thank you very much.
Laila Tov.
Laila
Thank
Tov.
you all for having us.